And welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Agentic Insurer. My name is Nick Lamparelli. I will be your co-pilot for this episode. This is episode 2, the self-driving claim, myth versus reality. And my guest today is Aditi Saraf from Shift Technology. Aditi, welcome.
Thank you.
So, Aditi, we start all of these episodes by allowing our guests a little bit of an elevator pitch. Aditi, who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So, hey everybody, my name is Aditi. I work with the product management team at Shift. I worked in the insurance tech area for about 20 years now. At Shift, I've done a few different things. I used to manage the flagship product names fraud detection, but in the last few months, I've shifted focus primarily on agentic products.
Okay. Well, we're going to be talking about the myths versus reality. So I think to set the foundation, Aditi, let's talk about reality. For those that have not watched any of the other episodes, give us a primer, just in case there are folks that don't know. And I don't think everyone knows like the full, complete answer to this. But how would you define artificial intelligence?
Sure. So when you think about artificial intelligence, right? Obviously, I think there has been an evolution of artificial intelligence over the last decade or so. But what we see as AI now is the ability for technology or so to say an intelligence to be able to understand trends and patterns, which is what most of us do as humans as well. And then to be able to understand those trends and patterns and be able to convert it into uh, what should be done to answer the question that's being asked from them. And that I think is broadly how you think of AI as it applies today in this world when we're moving towards agentic AI and smart AI, really.
Yeah. And for the audience sake, like we are just humans are just pattern recognition machines.
Yeah.
Right. When it comes to learning, Aditi, I always think of that example where they take a paragraph and they remove letters from each word. And the human has like such rapid appreciation of like, even as the letters, you can remove like all of the vowels or some of the key letters. Humans can still quickly read through because they can assign a natural probability towards, hey, it's most likely this word because of not only the shape of it, but the word that came before, the word that came after, and they can just rapidly pull out a sentence, which leads to the large language models, which essentially that's kind of what they're doing from an artificial intelligence standpoint. Can you help the audience understand what are large language models? What are they trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think large language models are trying to do exactly the same thing that you just mentioned, right? It started off like the first version of a large language model probably was our autocomplete in Gmail, right? Where you would type a word and it would tell you what is the next word that you should be see, what you potentially would want to type after you see this word. And at that point in time, it was very basic. It was just based on a pattern of what do I typically see as a machine, as humans typing right after they type this particular word. However, what that's evolved to now, really, with large language models, is the ability to truly understand um, past patterns and then be able to say that based on this understanding of past patterns, can I truly comprehend what I saw in the past and learn from it in a way that can help influence decision making in the future?
Yeah. And they started off with text, but have
Mm-hmm.
rapidly evolved to be able to do images, audio, and a whole bunch of other stuff. There's clearly still an evolution that's occurring with these models.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit as well with large language models? I've read I've read where the large language models and the algorithms that are created are basically pushing the boundaries of where they can go right now. I think there's this thought process that they're just going to keep improving and improving and improving, but we sort of have hit like a glass ceiling when it comes to this specifically what these models can do. Am I correct in that?
Uh, I'm not sure about that. I feel like there is always going to be an evolution on what these models can do. Like just at the pace at which we have been improving just in the last 6 months, I think like pre-December last year, being able to being able to have automatic code generated felt like a myth. But like here we are, just 6 months later, where so many companies have so much of their code automatically written. So I think it's not going to be the exact same large language model that we know today. But I think there's always going to be evolution in how these large language models are used, and incremental technology that gets added on top of it that's going to continuously be able to do more than it can do today at a much faster rate than we're expecting, even.
Okay. Well, Aditi, that naturally segues over to some of the myths that exist around AI and agentic AI. Before we jump into that, can you define? We've now defined AI, we've defined large language models. Can you define agentic AI? And every time I hear that word, I'm immediately thinking AI that's for insurance agents, right? But can you define agentic AI?
Sure. So I think agentic AI is I think I think when we think of agentic AI, a lot of people just confuse it with an LLM call, right? But an agentic AI is not really just a LLM call where you're getting an answer to a question or it's able to comprehend text. Agentic AI is really a combination of many different things. It's one, is the system able to assess the data that you provided to truly be able to comprehend it? Is the system based on that data able to recommend to you what you should be doing? Is the system able to prioritize and help you organize what you should be doing? And most importantly, from an agentic AI perspective, it's all the tools and skills that go into it, right? Which basically means, can you now automate some of the things that you are recommending to almost, drive true processes, versus just being a machine learning model which predicts, or just being an RPA which is able to do manual processes, automate manual processes, right? It's a evolution of actually trying to be able to do tasks that humans typically do, in a way that's learning from patterns and is able to make right decisions.
Yeah, so basically defining the tasks so that the output of one process becomes the input of the next one, and so on and so forth until the
Yep.
process is complete.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, so let's go into some of the myths that, for the items that we've defined here. I think one topic that we see come up almost every single time, Aditi, with at every single conference I go to, is, will the AI take all the jobs? Will AI replace you? Will it replace me?
I think it's fair to say that AI will replace work, but I don't think it will replace workers, and there's a difference, right? I think the biggest AI buzz that we hear is that we confuse AI with being a capability versus I think we confuse AI being a general ability to do something versus it just being a specific capability a technology can perform. And self-driving cars is a great example of it, right? So do driverless cars exist? They do, because we see Waymos on the street all the time. However, can this Waymo operate in any circumstances, on any particular road, in any condition, in any situation? No. And like that's the point where the AI buzz comes in, where yes, it can handle certain types of work, but it can't replace workers. And in the same way, it's very important when you define like AI, you're defining it in context of, I want to be able to do this specific work, but I still am operating within that operating model that I designed for it, with the constraints within which it operates, basically.
Yeah, and it I think what leads to that, is around, we'll call it a myth, but hey, it's going to replace the workers. It's not going to replace the workers, but in reality, it allows the workers to do the things that are actually more interesting, more complex, probably at the end of the day more satisfying for the worker, because they're not getting bogged down into into the mundane, into the repetitive stuff that an AI can take. Is that a myth on my part?
No, absolutely not. I think that um, AI. with a lot of these tools, it just makes your work a lot more interesting, right? It basically allows you to, it almost serves, and I hate to use the word assistant, but it almost serves as this extra lens that you can always apply when you're doing critical thinking to be able to guide your decisioning. And that's extremely useful regardless of the task you're doing, right? It could be trying to make a grocery list to being able to handle a claim or being able to write code. And like that's where the value really comes in.
Yeah. If we're Aditi, if we're using claims and claims adjusting as a workflow, which is a very large workflow, a very broad workflow, but also one where there's a lot of eyeballs on that workflow. You can't really afford to make mistakes there, or else regulators get involved, or worse, the legal system gets involved with. Well, can you talk about responsible AI? Can you talk about, yes, it can do a whole bunch of workflows, but still there are likely to be workflows where we're not going to want, even if AI theoretically could do all of it, we'll still want a human or many humans to be a part of the process for many other different reasons.
Yeah, for sure. I think that when it comes to claims, especially, right, there are a lot of processes in this world and even in the insurance life cycle, which are primarily governed with what happened in the past and what happened based on the prior experience you have. Claims, unfortunately, is not one of those processes, right? It is by nature an exception business. Claims follow the same life cycle. They have the same processes. They have the same patterns sometimes, but like a claimant is overwhelmed, two drivers have different stories about the exact same incident. A claim looks pretty routine till it goes sideways. So, like for all of these reasons, like human judgment, empathy, accountability, all of this really, really matters in claims. So, while can AI help is absolutely true, and it is not a myth, it's also true that it needs to operate within those boundaries because you always need that human that is brought into the loop at the right time to be able to deliver like on the promise that the insurance company is making when you're buying a policy, basically.
Yeah. What sort of error in thinking might occur if financial institutions, so let's across the board, brokers, wholesalers, MGAs, carriers, the entire ecosystem, where they begin having the human in the loop only where like a regulator requires them to do that. Can you talk about the error in thinking around allowing AI to do too much too soon?
Yeah.
Kind of skirting skirting the edge of the regulations, but might be actually harming those companies that do try to move too aggressively.
Yeah, I think it's a fine balance, right? I work in a SaaS company, and I when we're building products, we're constantly dealing with that trade-off of we want to go really fast, but we don't want to build hacky solutions or don't want to create tech debt. And I think insurance companies are feeling that more than ever right now. So I think it's really important when you think about it to make sure that one, when you're building automation, you're not building automation to a point where, of course, like AI can make mistakes, but so can humans. And AI making mistakes is not the problem. The problem is that when AI makes mistakes, it does it at scale, just like it automates at scale. And so the repercussions of an AI making mistakes is many-fold compared to a human making mistakes, right? So, which is why it's very important to use responsible AI. And when you think of responsible AI, your mind immediately goes to ethics, but it's not an ethics problem, it's an engineering problem, right? Because just thinking back at the self-driving car analogy, you don't call a self-driving car autonomous because it can steer. You call it autonomous because it has a braking system, it has sensors, it has a huge amount of engineering that has gone in, it has fallback mechanisms that ensure that it operates within those boundaries. And that's what we need to do with AI as well, which is one, we need to have the full stack of agentic capabilities. We need to have good data. We need to have data governance. We need to have security. We need to have good use case scoping. We need to have it supported with explainability. We need to make sure it's fair. And most importantly, while we're doing all of these things, we want to first start with more repetitive and less risky use cases so that AI is gradually learning versus automating a complex liability decision or a complex injury claim, because that's when the problems start occurring. So I think it's important to drive that balance to like iteratively improve versus like let's just automate a process and let's just have humans come in if something fails, because when AI fails, it fails at scale basically.
Yeah. And Aditi, that has been a common theme throughout all of these episodes is what is it that you're trying to accomplish, and have you mapped out as an organization, this is what we do, this is how we do it as well. I guess it's kind of a myth, but we are seeing institutions that are kind of skipping over that, like almost overconfident in their understanding of all of their workflows and how that workflow operates, kind of jumping into AI before they've established any of those elements. And then you talked about governance as well and the data structure. That kind of, I've seen a lot of companies jump into AI. I'll call it prematurely before they've kind of scoped all of it out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think a lot of companies today believe that AI is the solution, right? It is the differentiator that's going to change everything in my insurance business or in my claims process. But AI is actually just an enabler, right? Because what it means is that along with AI, you need to have an operating model design that changes, that allows your humans to do work the way they should be doing. It means change management. It means deciding what to automate and what not to automate, more importantly. And unless you make all of those decisions, AI is never going to be a differentiator. It'll probably be a deterrent, in fact.
And to Aditi, to sort of like wind down this particular episode, I want to talk about the potential for a back to future moment that we have here, where everyone, AI is the buzz and everyone's aggressively putting into it. And you brought up differentiation. And in my mind, it's like, well, if everyone's all using AI and they're all automating the same workflows, which in the insurance vertical, we're all have pretty much the same kind of workflows, right? It seems to me there's an opportunity to differentiate in a back to the future moment where this allows organizations to reestablish relationships. Like it gives them this chance. And I'm thinking of the smaller firms that don't necessarily have the budgets for the big AI overbuild, right? It allows them to go visit agents and brokers, take them out to dinner, take them golfing, take them to a sporting event, like reestablish and nurture those relationships. Is that a myth?
And so I think that when designed well, that's exactly what a good AI process should do, right? Where it is automating tasks that you don't want to do, automating tasks that require you to do a ton of analysis of data and past experience, while you focus on things that AI can never focus on, which is can you be empathetic? Can you build relations? Can you ensure that you're delivering on the promise that the insurance company made? And that actually is, like you said, that's a back to the future moment where like you're truly delivering that experience, which is the ideal experience for the customer, which is your data is ensuring you're quantitatively right. And then because you're using all of this empathy and this human element, you're ensuring that the customer satisfaction element is right too.
Yeah, sort of end on a claims notice. Sure, an AI can do all of the different workflows that are required in a claims, but you know what they can't do? When someone's crying on the other end of the phone, reassure them. AI cannot do that, but a
Yeah,
human
no, absolutely.
can, and that at the end of the day, that does make a huge difference, and a huge differentiator. So, fantastic conversation, Aditi. For the audience, my name is Nick Lamparelli. I've been the host of this particular episode. We check out all of the other episodes in this series of the Agentic Insurer. So for my guest, Aditi Saraf, my name is Nick Lamparelli. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Aditi.
Thank you so much.